Ethan Morales was up before the sun most mornings, standing over a hot stove in the back of Rosewood Cafe, while the rest of the city still slept. His hands were scarred from years of burns and cuts. His back ached from long shifts, and his son Mateo was growing faster than Ethan could afford. But he showed up. He always showed up. That's what fathers do, he told himself every morning when the alarm went off at 4:30. The cafe wasn't fancy. It sat on a corner lot between a laundromat and a pharmacy, the kind of place people pass through on their way to somewhere better. But it was steady work, and Ethan had learned a long time ago that steady was more valuable than exciting. It was a Tuesday in late October when he first really noticed her. She sat on the bench outside the cafe every morning, wrapped in layers of mismatched clothing that had seen too many seasons. Her hair was gray and tangled, her face lined with years Ethan couldn't count. She never asked for anything. She just sat there, hands folded in her lap, watching the world move around her like she was waiting for something that might never come. Most people looked away. Some pretended she wasn't there at all. Ethan brought her a cup of coffee one morning. Black, no sugar. She looked up at him with pale blue eyes that seemed startled by the gesture, and she whispered, "Thank you." Her voice was so soft he almost missed it. He nodded and went back inside. The next day, he brought her coffee and a blueberry muffin. She took it carefully, like it was made of glass, and said nothing, but her eyes followed him as he walked away. By the end of the week, it became routine. Every morning before the rush, Ethan would step outside with something warm. Soup, toast, scrambled eggs, whatever he had extra of. She accepted it without fuss, without stories or speeches. Just a quiet, "Thank you," and a look that felt like gratitude, but also something deeper, something sadder. His co-workers noticed. "You're wasting food on her again," said Marcus, the manager, shaking his head. "She doesn't even buy anything." Ethan shrugged. "She's not bothering anyone. Still, you keep giving handouts. Word gets around. Next thing you know, we got a crowd out there." Ethan didn't argue. He just kept doing it. Mateo asked about her one Saturday when Ethan brought him to the cafe after soccer practice. The boy was 10, all elbows and questions, his jersey still damp with sweat. "Dad, who's that lady?" Ethan glanced out the window. She was there as always, hands folded, eyes distant. Just someone who needs a little help. "Does she have a family?" Ethan's throat tightened. "I don't know, Bud. Maybe not anymore." Mateo was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "We should make her something special." Ethan smiled despite the ache in his chest. "Yeah, we should." The next morning, Ethan made her his mother's recipe, arroz con leche, warm and sweet, the kind of thing that felt like a hug from the inside. He brought it out in a to-go container with a plastic spoon, and for the first time, she smiled. It was small and fleeting, but it was real. "This is kind," she said quietly. "You're kind." Ethan didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded and went back to work. Her name, he later learned, was Clara, or at least, that's what she told him one rare morning when she spoke more than a few words. She didn't offer a last name. She didn't explain where she came from or why she was alone. And Ethan didn't ask. Some people carried stories too heavy to share with strangers. Weeks passed. Clara became part of the rhythm of his mornings, a silent constant in a world that moved too fast. He didn't think much about why she stayed or what her life had been before. He just knew she was there and that she needed someone to see her. Then one Monday, she wasn't. Ethan stepped outside with her usual coffee and toast, but the bench was empty. He scanned the street, thinking maybe she'd moved to another spot, but there was no sign of her. Tuesday came. Still nothing. By Thursday, Ethan felt a knot forming in his stomach. He asked around, other shop owners, the guy who ran the newsstand, but no one had seen her. It was like she'd vanished into the same invisibility she'd lived in all along. Friday morning, a black sedan pulled up in front of the cafe. 3 people stepped out, 2 men in sharp suits and a woman with a leather briefcase. They moved with the kind of confidence that came from money and authority, and when they walked into Rosewood Cafe, every conversation stopped. "We're looking for Ethan Morales," the woman said. Ethan wiped his hands on his apron and stepped forward, his pulse quickening. "That's me." She extended a hand. My name is Angela Torres. I'm an attorney representing the estate of Clara Wynne. The name meant nothing to him. I don't know anyone by that name. You knew her as Clara, Angela said gently. The woman who sat outside your cafe. Ethan's stomach dropped. What happened to her? Angela's expression softened. She passed away last week, quietly in her sleep. I'm very sorry. The room seemed to tilt. Ethan gripped the counter to steady himself. I didn't even know she was sick. She didn't want anyone to know, Angela said. Clara lived very privately, but she left something behind. For you. Ethan shook his head, confused. I don't understand. I barely knew her. Angela opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. Clara Wynne was the daughter of philanthropist Richard Wynne. She walked away from her family 20 years ago after her father tried to control every aspect of her life. She spent those years living simply, observing people, searching for proof that compassion still existed outside of wealth and power. Ethan's mouth went dry. Why are you telling me this? Because you were the proof she found, Angela said. She documented your kindness over the past 6 months. Every meal, every conversation. She wrote about you extensively in her journal. And before she passed, she made a decision. One of the men stepped forward and placed a set of keys on the counter. Clara owned a property 3 blocks from here, Angela continued. An old community center she purchased years ago but never opened. She intended it to be a shelter for women and children in need, but she never trusted anyone enough to run it. Until now. Ethan stared at the keys like they were a live grenade. You're saying she left this to me? She named you the steward, Angela confirmed. The building is fully funded. The trust covers operational costs for the next 10 years. She wanted someone who understood what it meant to care without expectation. Someone who didn't need recognition or reward. Ethan couldn't breathe. I'm just a cook. You're exactly what she needed you to be, Angela said softly. That night, Ethan sat at a small kitchen table with Mateo asleep in the next room. The keys sat in front of him, heavy with meaning he was still trying to process. Clara had seen him, really seen him, and in return, she'd given him something he never thought he'd have, a way to make a real difference. He didn't quit his job. He couldn't afford to, but he started spending his evenings and weekends at the shelter, cleaning it up, making it warm and safe. He hired a part-time manager, someone who shared Clara's vision. Slowly, women and children began to arrive, people who'd been invisible too long, just like Clara had been. Months later, Ethan and Mateo visited the small memorial garden where Clara's ashes had been scattered. Ethan carried a container of Eras con leche and set it gently on the stone bench. Thank you, he whispered, for trusting me. Mateo stood beside him, quiet and thoughtful. Do you think she knew Dad? How much you cared? Ethan looked out at the garden, at the flowers swaying in the breeze. Yeah, Bud, I think she did. He took his son's hand, and together they walked back into the world, carrying forward a quiet promise Clara had left behind. To see the unseen, to protect the forgotten, and to never stop offering warmth to those who needed it most. Because that's what love looks like when no one's watching.